YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. And today we're going to go through some news, some interesting topics actually, and buzz throughout NFL training camps here. There's a lot of injuries happening. Unfortunate, it sucks. I'm not going to sit here and list off all the injuries. I'm sure a lot of you know the injuries, and you can go on our Twitter. You can find news there as well. But I found, there's a lot of reports coming out of training camp and a lot of, interesting news here. And we can talk about these. We can see if they're overreactions. We can see if, it's time to panic a little bit or worry a little bit on some of these takes from training camp. So I found a lot of these very interesting. Before we get started, 60K, that's our subscriber goal. Trying to hit that early in the NFL season. We're going to have full coverage like always. We'll do weekly picks, picking every single game with the boys of the Goat House. Favorite series on the channel for sure. I do score predictions. I update power rankings every single week, and plenty more. We got full coverage for the NFL. I cannot wait. It's just around the corner here, but it's pretty exciting to see what's going on in training camp, except for the injuries, the unfortunate part. So some teams taking some blows, some tough blows already. We have a Twitter, Instagram, podcast, Patreon for bonus content. You can see the links on the side there, but you'll find the links down in the description and in the comments of every single video. So we would be much appreciated if you could subscribe, click that like button, check any of those links out. Would really, really appreciate that. But let's talk about, what do we got first here? We got interesting news here from the Lions camp here is DeAndre Swift. I kind of heard this multiple times when camp, and remember, camp just kind of started full go recently. So a lot of these you can't really worry too much yet, but they're pretty interesting. But I heard that right away that DeAndre Swift was, maybe struggling to get in the playbook, struggling to find a role. And then you got Kerryon Johnson walking around with a knee brace there. So, and we know they drafted DeAndre Swift because, he's talented. And because Kerryon Johnson, he's talented as well, but he has, the multiple injuries that pop up every single year so far. And now it's coming out that Darrell Bevell, it says it remains to be seen how DeAndre Swift fits in the offense. And that is not... It's early. I don't want to overreact. I don't want anybody to overreact. I don't want anybody to panic, but that's never a good sign. These days, the last several years, guys get in there, and it's either they can understand the offense, they can understand their role, they can understand the playbook, or they can't. And it usually, we hear these things right off the bat, and they actually stay true for the most part. So, and that the offensive coordinator's coming out and saying it, it's pretty. It's rough. It's a little rough. So. And they signed Jonathan Williams, too, who was pretty solid. I know some of us picked him up for their fantasy team for those couple of weeks with the Colts. He was pretty solid, and it's a guy to have. It's a good guy to have, but it's also not really a good sign here. Swift is talented. I would imagine in some way he's, for sure, we can lock it in, going to be involved in the passing game. You don't want to get too obvious, too predictable, though, because he's definitely more of the passing game running back. Kerryon Johnson more the running game guy. Right now, Jonathan Williams got to be running back 3, but this is something to monitor. It's a little scary. Hopefully he can. It reminds me of Ronald Jones with the Buccaneers. We knew he was talented. DeAndre Swift more talented as a prospect, but Ronald Jones got into Tampa Bay. The first week or so, we heard that he can't really figure out his role, can't really figure out the playbook, and he's playing more and more, but that was something that created a talented dude to not be as much of a factor as we thought he would. So it's something to monitor for sure. They signed Jonathan Williams, we mentioned that, so that's interesting to see how the running back depth unfolds. I was talking about, when ranking running backs, start the year, Kerryon Johnson going to be the lead guy, going to get more snaps early. I was predicting DeAndre Swift to get more snaps by the end of the year. You total up the snaps, the carries maybe. I thought DeAndre Swift to be more of the guy, maybe because he has a little more talent, maybe because Kerryon Johnson is the injury concern. Now that's starting to fade away for me. It's a little scary right now. I know the lack of training camp and lack of practice because the COVID probably is a legitimate excuse, so that's why I'm not panicking. A little scary though, especially, I'll say this, fantasy football, I ain't touching Lions running backs. I'm not touching them. I don't know. We can move on to the next one. Another one that we can start to worry a little bit on, Big Ben, you heard early in the camp, even though he's starting to pick it up now, that he's short-arming a lot of throws. And we've seen him with that crazy elbow injury, surgery in multiple spots. Apparently, it's an injury that that no one's come back from or no one's had and actually played the quarterback position after the fact, having that surgery. And he's starting to short arm stuff now, and that's, it's a guy that's pure. I mean, he's more than just a strong arm, but we know Big Ben likes to air it deep, and that strong arm is a big factor in his game. So something like this, starts to worry me a little bit. The Steelers are a very good, complete team, one of the top defenses. They're adding weapons. We see them hyping up. We even see Joe Hayden hyping up Chase Claypool. Then they have multiple other weapons, so that's great to see, great to hear. This is again, it's too early to be like, okay, Big Ben's lost his touch. He can't throw deep no more. That's an overreaction. Too much panicking going on. But it's something to monitor. It's something that worries me a little bit. Can he? Because we see the Steelers last year, borderline playoff team, borderline, and that was with some pretty terrible quarterback play, some great weapons that really weren't utilized to their fullest because of it. Great defense. That almost alone, in an offensive-driven league here, got them to the playoffs. So adding Big Ben back there makes them a lot better. But will Big Ben be back there full go for the full year? That's what we start to question here. So it's something, again, most of these are things to kind of keep an eye on, to monitor. Maybe you can worry a little bit. I know most people are confident. That's good. It is early. Lack of practice, makes it a great excuse, a good excuse on why things like this could be happening. Next, I noticed that Patriots have been giving Damien Harris, the former Alabama standout running back, a pretty big load with the ones in practice. A heavy workload, they're saying. He's looking great. He's looking like he's running solid. It's not really a surprise that he looks good because he was a very solid prospect out of Alabama there. But they do have Lamar Miller. They do have Sony Michel, but those guys are both, they just signed Lamar Miller too. Those guys are both currently out with injuries, so that would make sense why Damien Harris is getting the load. So people out there hearing that, Harris is getting the load. Will he be the guy? Knowing Bill Belichick and McDaniels, this Patriots team, it wouldn't really be surprising no matter who the guy is, but I still think Sony Michel, if healthy, is kind of number one. Lamar Miller's probably the number two. Those guys being out would be the reason to not get overexcited or over curious, I guess, about Damien Harris maybe being the starting running back. It's more likely going to be those other guys. But they got, I can't believe that running back room. I don't know if anybody has better running back depth and rotation than the Patriots. They're loading up on some talented guys. A guy like this, Damien Harris, would probably be getting a ton of touches for another team, several other teams. So we see how good their depth is. But I'd say don't overreact to this because he's with the ones. I'd say cool it a little bit. Those guys are out. But it's good to see. That's good news. He's doing good with the ones. So fantastic for the Patriots. What do we got next? We got Melvin Ingram. Obviously, news a couple days ago that he's holding out because he wants a better contract situation. So if you take a look at his contract, he has just this year left. He's a free agent after this year. He'll be a free agent after the season, next offseason. And he's due $14 million in base salary this season. The $14 million is a pretty good price, pretty good number. And I say for Ingram, where his talent is right now, it's really not too far off on what he's, I guess his value is right now. Kind of look at the past, though, the way Melvin Ingram created for his teammates, the way he played, the guy that I've always appreciated, respected his game so much because he moves around all over the place. Teams kind of got a game plan for Melvin Ingram, so that creates for his teammate. That makes his teammates better, and we've seen him on the field, off the field, the difference between the other players. We see Joey Bosa with and without him, so he's been so important. This team still is because we see the difference last year alone with and without him at times because he missed some games there. So you really can't blame the man for sitting out, and you see Joey Bosa be the highest paid defensive player in football, and he's over there. Maybe he knows Bosa has more overall talent, more upside, but he feels like he creates for that guy. He is that key piece to this defense, so it would make sense on why he wants more money. The tricky situation here is $14 million is one. The Chargers may feel that's enough, How much more do you want? Maybe they can bump it up to 15, maybe 16 million. I don't really see them going over that. So 16 might be even much. Does he want an extension? We don't know exactly why he's holding out. If he wants an extension, the Chargers got a list of free agents. They got enough cap space next year, but they got a long list of free agents. I felt like they were going to move on from Ingram. Nwosu, I think they drafted a couple years ago, and he was kind of that similar role with USC. Is he an edge rusher? Can he do more than that? It's kind of Ingram. So I think they were kind of developing him to be the replacement. They also draft Kenneth Murray, who is listed as inside linebacker, and I think he plays an off-the-ball linebacker for the Chargers. But intriguing because he actually rushed the passer from the edge. He can move around, do multiple different things. So that's kind of the wild card guy to replace Ingram here. Unlikely, but it's kind of a wild card guy. And Ingram's aging. He might be declining a little bit compared to like 2-3 years ago. You see the injuries popping up. So I believe, just a prediction, they were getting ready to move on. For all those things I explained, they were getting ready to move on from Melvin Ingram here. So they don't want to give him an extension. And it's a tough spot to be in because, does he sit out? Do they really want to risk not having him? Is it extension or have him hold out? Because that's going to be a tough choice. You're probably going to let him hold out. Is it give him a few extra million, a couple, 1, 2, 3 extra million this year, or have him hold out? That would be a little easier choice. I think they need him. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Very interesting, to say the least, here for the Chargers. I think they need him out there. Yeah, they can have some other guys step up, but it's going to be a drop-off, a little bit of a drop-off here. Next, talk about I thought this was interesting. It's a report from ESPN here for the Jets that their offensive plan is to lessen Le'Veon Bell's role or workload by utilizing Frank Gore. I guess we can't believe everything to the fullest in the offseason. Most things end up being, they're reporting it, somewhat accurate. It's just weird to me. There's always something weird coming out of the Jets organization, coming out of Adam Gase or Greg Williams, we've seen a couple weeks ago talking about Jamal Adams in Seattle. There's always something interesting, comments or plans. The problem with Gase's offense is he gets predictable. He doesn't like to run the ball too much. Le'Veon Bell, I felt like didn't get enough. He got enough carries, but it was in predictable situations. But they didn't utilize him right, I don't think, and he could have got more of a workload. They could have involved the running back, I guess, a little more. But they're going to lessen his workload, do the opposite, and go to Frank Gore. Frank Gore's still got some left in the tank here. Don't get me wrong, but they're going to lessen Bell's workload for the older guy, the guy with a little more wear. And does that mean they're going to run the ball more like they should? I don't know what the Jets. I don't know what Adam Gase. I didn't like that hire in the first place. I get this is you don't want to overreact from something like this, but they're kind of all over the place with their game plan, with their play calling. So it's something to see. They drafted P. Ryan too, so we'll see how they split the carries up. They're looking to. It looks like they're valuing the running back a little more, adding these number of guys, so maybe they do want to run the ball more, but Bell definitely deserves the workload. We'll see what happens here. Definitely something to keep an eye on for. All these things are. The Broncos, it's just kind of something kind of funny here that he's Melvin Gordon for the Broncos is adjusting to the altitude there in Denver, so I don't know if that's going to affect him early in the year. Will they limit him? It's just something just interesting there. I've been kind of back and forth. Who's going to be the lead guy this year for the Broncos? It's hard to take away from Phillip Lindsay because he's been so good, getting better. I think he has almost everything to his game. Is he a guy you want to give a short yardage carry to? I can't say that you should avoid that 100%. I think he can do it, but yeah, obviously there's better guys like Melvin Gordon to give to in that short yard situation perhaps, but are you going to take that much away from Phillip Lindsay? So I can't wait to see that. Either way, it's not really a lose situation. It's kind of a win-win. I just think early in the year, Gordon adjusting. Their first game is home at Mile High against the Tennessee Titans, a pretty good defense. So I think Lindsay might get a good chunk of the snaps and the carries in week one there. So we'll see. Another thing to watch, but I'm sure he'll be fine. Interesting. Peter King was guessing that Gronkowski would finish third in snaps this year for the Buccaneers tight ends. That's a hot take. He was predicting O.J. Howard to get the most snaps, then Cameron Brate, then Gronkowski. It's a bit of a hot take, but I'd say I can see it. I'm not going to predict it, but I can see it. because Gronkowski always getting beat up. He's trying to come back, trying to get back, and I trust that he can kind of get back in his routine, get back in his role, get back in shape. It already looks like he is. Looks like he's in fantastic shape, actually. But you don't want to give him too much of a workload because then he'll end up injured for the playoffs. So save him for the playoffs. He's already proven. You don't need to have him be proven during the regular season, but you are playing for a tough division title spot. The Saints are a hell of a regular season team. They're a hell of a team in general. They will be out there competing for that first place spot. I mean, so will the Falcons. Panthers could be a sneaky offense. So you don't want to take it too easy, but even though it's a bold take, I'm not really predicting it. I can see it here. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Next, we got the Raiders. I think this is something that people could overreact to. This is not something to pay attention to too much. Bryan Edwards, I like the pick. Fantastic pick. This is a freakish dude. Big body guy, but he can run. He is a tank after the catch. He can play downfield, contested catchability. The hands are ridiculous. One of the best in the class in terms of hands. So I like Bryan Edwards. He's getting first team reps over Henry Ruggs, and I think that's an overreaction. I think that's kind of what's the right word here? It's kind of, it shouldn't really be said like that because Edwards and Ruggs, the two, obviously they picked Ruggs in the first round. They're technically not the same position. They're both receivers, not really the same position. So it's Edwards, Aguilar, and Zay Jones out there with the first teams early on. Ruggs starting to ease in there. Remember, Tyrell Williams sitting out early in practice there, early in training camp with an injury. Edwards, Williams, kind of the same receiver position, same role. So Edwards steps up into that spot. And you could ask why Henry Ruggs, why isn't he starting over Nelson Aguilar or Zay Jones, one of those guys? Because Henry Ruggs can play outside, can play in the slot, pretty much can play all over, uses speed. They used a very high pick, the first receiver taken in a historic elite receiver class. So why isn't he playing? Gruden's that old school guy. I actually kind of agree usually with not stepping in there and playing the rookies right away. They pretty much had no choice with Edwards, so end up doing it anyways. But yeah, I don't like day one first team reps in a scrimmage, or even if there's no defense. Throwing the rookies in there, I don't really like it because you think you don't want them to get that attitude like they're that good. They already earned the job. You kind of got to go in there and earn a little bit. You got to get your reps in. So that's the only thing here. He's not sitting behind Bryan Edwards, Henry Ruggs that is. That's not the case. Tyrell Williams is hurt. You want rookies to kind of earn their spot there. So yeah, and Nelson Aguilar is kind of over Henry Ruggs, is actually the guy that's over Ruggs right off the bat. And again, Ruggs starting to ease in there as we're talking here, starting to ease in there, getting more reps there with the ones. But Aguilar, more of the veteran guy. Ruggs is going to be their best receiver. He's going to be the best receiver. And I've heard that people are blown away with how Edwards is looking. And I think, I've never been a big Tyrell Williams is good, obviously. He'll be used a ton. I've never been a huge Tyrell Williams guy, though. I kind of thought they overpaid him in the offseason, but he'll be a factor still, impact. Edwards could be sneaking up on him soon. Maybe not this year in terms of the snaps or receptions, but very soon, maybe next year. So that's something to keep an eye on for sure going forward for the Raiders. Just like Gruden being old school. Let the rookie kind of earn his way. Gerald McCoy, obviously everyone knew about that. Gerald McCoy had I don't want to focus on injuries too much here. Just want to talk about the interesting stuff. But this was kind of interesting because they were able to release him, the Cowboys that is, and save $2.5 million in cap space. So they freed that up actually. So something within the contract allowed them to be able to cut him and save that money. So smart move by the front office of the Cowboys there. And apparently they knew what was bothering McCoy or what could potentially happen. He's had the injuries, and that's why I really wasn't huge on the signing. I talked about the big signings of the offseason as they were happening, and people were kind of like, where's McCoy? Why aren't you talking about this one? Good player. You kind of almost, you hate to say, you kind of almost expect at that point, and it felt like the Cowboys did as well, which is not really good, but if you can protect yourself within that contract, it's good, and that's what they did. So they signed Everson Griffin, which was great for the end spot, opposite DeMarcus Lawrence. Stock up for the Cowboys. This brought it down a little bit. Injury is really the only concern with the defensive unit, looking at the D-line and the linebacker unit, and they've already got hit with one. So they free up a little bit of space. Will they go out and try to find somebody to get in there, to maybe replace him? I mean, you can't really find a starter replacement right now. I'm thinking Crawford and Poe probably start in the inside. So we'll see. But it's a tough blow. But it's really the interesting part is that what they put, the language in the contract, they were able to put in there that they can save that $2.5 million. Ryan Fitzpatrick is expected to be the starter according to Josh Tolentino there. It's pretty clear, he says, actually. So I thought that was pretty interesting. That's a report from, I guess, one person. So maybe we can't take it too serious, but it's definitely something to watch here. He thinks it's pretty clear. And that's really not too surprising. Just week one, he's not saying he expects them to hold out Tua the whole year. I've also heard and that's nothing to overreact about, but Tua's kind of being babied a little bit, kind of still, learning the playbook, so maybe struggling a little bit to learn it, but he's got to run the show. He's the quarterback. They had the offseason wasn't ideal for rookies, so it kind of makes sense. You wish you would pick it up a little faster, but that's something. Tua's got to get some plays this year. He's got to get some starts this year, you would think, but week one, maybe right now, looking like Ryan Fitzpatrick. Hopefully Tua can figure things out there. It sounds like they trust him health-wise. We thought maybe he wouldn't start week one just because they didn't trust him health-wise. It seems like that's fine. It's just getting in there and learning the playbook in a short amount of time, which is understandable here. Rookie trying to dive into that. So Fitzpatrick could be the guy week one. We'll see. Next, we got, Clowney. It was reported by Josina Anderson that there is kind of a surprise, sneaky team that no one's talking about out there that runs a 4-3 defense that Clowney would play 4-3 end in, which is still an edge rusher, obviously, that no one's talking about, that has some interest in Clowney. It would be at a lower rate. So I was trying to think, if you follow us on Twitter, I kind of touched on this a little bit, trying to think 4-3 teams that could have interest in him that would offer a lower rate. Right off the bat, I'm thinking it's got to be somebody that's low on cap that can use him. So the 4-3 teams, low on cap that can use him. I think the Vikings right off the bat, they tried to get Everson Griffin back. They couldn't do that, but they want to pay him too much. They're going to like Clowney better than him. Depends on the price. They need somebody badly to pair with Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter actually hasn't practiced yet for the Vikings, but confident he'll be there week one. But they need somebody to pair with him. So it could be them. They run a 4-3, not too much cap. I think the Saints were interesting. They got a pretty good duo with Cam Jordan and with Marcus Davenport, who's a good young player. Had the injuries pop up. So, and their windows, they're winning now. They chose Drew Brees right now over Bridgewater long term, as expected. They're winning. It's Super Bowl or bust right now for the Saints. They want to, you can't be afraid to get better. They know that. They want to go out and get the best they can get. Davenport's got a bright future. He has the injury concern. Clowney would be much better right off the bat. Cam Jordan Clowney would be something. So the Saints are a team for sure that I can see. The Falcons are another team I came up with. There's no guarantee on what they're going to run defensively. They changed their looks throughout the whole year last year. They were more of a 4-3, to start. That's what they want to be. That's what Dan Quinn wants to be. But they did bring in Dante Fowler, who's been more successful as a 3-4 outside linebacker, so they could switch. If they keep it, well, let me add this. Clowney can play either, so that's really not the problem. But just trying to identify the 4-3 teams. So I think the Falcons could be considered as one. So those are the lower cap teams that could be that lower rate offer teams for Jadeveon Clowney with the interest. And I thought right away it has to be a lower cap team because they're offering the low rate. I'm like, no, that doesn't necessarily make sense. It could be a team with a ton of cap that just doesn't want to offer a lot, maybe just a 1 year. So who are the 4-3 teams that we've been talking about that could be interesting? My prediction was the Titans. They are a 3-4 team, and I'm still kind of thinking the Titans, but it's up in the air right now. But that's a 3-4 team. 4-3 team, Colts. I talked about the Colts a lot pre-free agency, and then I guess in podcasts recently, or somewhat recently when we're talking about Clowney. The Colts would make sense. That would be like the Cowboys. They signed Everson Griffin, and Everson Griffin isn't as good as he used to be. He's still good, but this was a major signing in my opinion because it was like that was kind of a hole, and that one piece makes that entire defensive front, the defense, better. It makes the Cowboys that much better just because it was that last need they needed to fill. The Colts, the same thing. I'm not a huge fan of their D-line. They made it better with Buckner for sure. That's great. Houston, solid still. Other than that, not much. If they add a guy like Clowney, I like this defensive line that much better. Like a huge boost. For just one player, yes, a huge boost. And they have a ton of cap space, but they may not want to offer a whole bunch. They're usually pretty careful with their money, their spending. I think doing a one-year deal with a lot of money would make sense though for them. $15 million is probably the bottom line. I heard that Clowney, maybe 14 go down to. I've heard 15 been thrown out there, the bottom line to play this year. So the Colts would make sense. The Eagles, Barnett already went down in practice. Nothing major, I don't think. We can learn more on that. Brandon Graham still very solid for them, but yeah, maybe a guy that's not going to get any better. Still good, not going to get any better. I think that's obvious. He's not a young guy, but still very solid for the Eagles defense. So they have a pretty solid group there, a little beat up. They have injury concerns throughout their whole roster. Again, it's a team that wants to win now. They know how to win. You go and get better. Clowney would be your best pass rusher there. They have cap space this year. They're rough in the cap space for the future. A one-year deal would not affect that. They can easily do a 1 year, $15 million like you want. So the Colts, Eagles, and then a team like the Bills, I say unlikely, but Bills defense arguably could be the best defense in football, in my opinion. Very balanced, some studs out there as well. I think they can get better at the edge rush position. They got pretty good rotation depth. You got Jerry Hughes, you got Mario Addison, you got AJ Epinesa, who at the end of the year could end up being their more productive guy, but Addison declining, Hughes declining, Epinesa maybe lacking athletically. You don't know 100% what you're going to get. You're very good at getting pressure on the inside. Those inside interior guys are going to push the quarterback outside. You want those edge rushers to be able to make the play out there. Getting Clowney. If the Bills got Clowney, I'd call them number one defense in football. Elite defense, number one in football. Guarantee, lock it in. That's what I would say if they got Clowney. They get that much better. They have the opportunity to compete. They can compete right now, but really to compete right now, contend right now. So those are some 4-3 teams I thought were interested. Again, the Titans kind of led the way for me the whole time. I thought they were the most interested. We heard news about the Jets. Don't think that happens. We heard the Browns made an offer. He declined it. Apparently it was around 17 to 19 million range. So interesting stuff there for 3, but we'll see. It's definitely the Clowney watch continues. It's wild stuff. Never seen anything like it. Wild stuff. Speaking of the Bills, we just talked about the Bills. Some reports that during Tuesday's practice, which was yesterday, I'm recording this on the 19th here. Wednesday the 19th is when I'm talking right now. Yeah, rough day for Josh Allen. I never like to overreact. It's interesting. That's why it's here. I don't want to overreact. There's always they're slinging the ball every single day. These quarterbacks, they're always trying. It's the time to try something new. Try to throw off the defense or do the different things. So I never want to overreact from the goods or the bads from practice because it's practice. But it was interesting that they caught him staring down receivers. A lot of passes broken up. So. We need Josh Allen to take that next step. Josh Allen's kind of the X factor of this Bills offense, the Bills team actually, because the defense is going to ball. They add Stephon Diggs, they have the weapons, and wonder how Stephon Diggs is doing with this because we see him get a bit frustrated very easily. So even from one day of, even though you shouldn't overreact, so hopefully Josh Allen, you can't stare down the receivers. That's something that when you're watching film, teams will pick it up. Young quarterbacks, I talked about this years ago all the time. Young quarterbacks, when all of a sudden they fall off, people think they get worse. They don't actually. You think the young quarterback, third year in the NFL, fourth year, whatever it may be, is getting worse? He's losing talent? No, he's not really improving. He's doing the same mistakes, staring down receivers. So he's just staying about the same. Teams, players get a second crack at him, a third crack at him. Maybe a first time, but they have more game film on them. They can recognize things like that, and that's why they struggle. They don't actually get worse. They just get figured out. So he's got to clean that up a bit. Can't overreact too much. I'm excited to watch this offense with Diggs mainly. I'm excited Diggs, Josh Allen connection. Moving on here. Interesting stuff that we can see from the Texans. The running backs coach talked about using both David Johnson, who they acquired in the DeAndre Hopkins deal, and Duke Johnson on the field at the same time. It's pretty exciting stuff. That sounds interesting. Duke Johnson is pretty good in the receiving game. You see his speed. You see him He can line up in the slot. David Johnson's the guy that I expect to pick it up with this offense. I think he'll play pretty well as long as he stays healthy, which I think he will. So using both those guys at the same time could throw off defenses, which he mentions there, the running back coach. He definitely mentions and talks about that. It'll be tough for them to disguise things, the defense, but they're kind of disguising things as well. And that kind of goes in. You see that with the Texans, they got rid of Hopkins, but they have crazy depth at the receiver position. They got a long list of guys, a lot of speed too. It just felt like they want to air it out a ton. You go through these guys, rotate them in and out, use a lot of receivers, ton of receiver, multiple receiver sets, more than maybe everybody but the Cardinals in football. But now they're talking about 2 running backs, and I think they're going to do both. I think they're going to throw them in and out. Duke Johnson be in the slot. He can be one of the receivers. They can have 2 running backs in the backfield. They're gonna be throwing this at you, and I always talk about this, that be unpredictable. That's the number one rule about calling an offense, being an offense. And if you're throwing all these different looks and teams don't have too much game footage on it from previous years, you don't know. The defense is a guessing game. It's so hard to play. It's a guessing game. This is going to be unique. It's going to be interesting. So it's definitely something I'm looking forward to for the Texans there. Earlier today, just a little bit ago, Titans released rookie Cole McDonald, the quarterback from Hawaii, and they signed Trevor Siemian. I thought this was interesting. Usually you don't see a rookie that was actually drafted get cut that early. He's very talented. Cole McDonald, aired the ball out, threw for a ton of yards, has that big play ability, which you need. See, there's some quarterbacks that are okay, but they can't take the next step in the NFL. It's because they don't have that big play ability over 10 yards, over 20 yards downfield. They don't have that clutch factor. I thought Cole McDonald had it. I definitely thought he was worth the draft pick. The issue with him, he had some turnovers, but a lot of guys have turnovers. When things weren't going good for Hawaii, that's where it came up. It's a negative, but it's nothing new. The throwing motion in release was the interesting part. He had almost a Phillip Rivers type throwing motion, but it was way more exaggerated, way longer, and that led to a slower release. And we know how people overreact, coaches, scouts, GMs. It matters, but sometimes they overreact. Like they see a guy throw once, don't like it. Sometimes we hear Drew Brees adjusted his throwing motion, which is rare. But maybe, so the Titans draft and they take a chance. They actually tried to adjust it. They were working with him to change it, and I guess it's been pretty clear that he either insists on going back, which is understandable, instinctive stuff, you're just used to it. He insists on going back to it, and they just don't like it. For me, you can throw the ball, I don't care about your release, but if it's a little slow, okay. Or he switched it, and he's just much worse when switching it. So to me, it was very clear right off the bat that they did not like him. They brought in Trevor Siemian, which has experience. He was in for the Jets for a little bit last year. Actually looked pretty decent until he messed up his ankle. That was pretty gruesome. But other chances he's played in the past, he struggled. So it's a backup to Ryan Tannehill. I think they were talking about he's familiar with the playbook, similar style playbook that he's what he's used to. So it's a good guy behind Tannehill, I suppose. It's tough to see that Cole McDonald didn't get too much of a chance. Interesting to see if somebody else picks him up right away. You would think somebody's got to give him a chance, try it out. But most teams probably wrote him off before the draft even started, well before the draft even started, because the throwing motion, because we know how serious that those guys, the scouts, GMs, coaches, take that stuff. And now that you fail already with the Titans might not be too appealing. So I'd say, right away, somebody's definitely got to pick him up, but maybe not so fast. That's interesting. But again, the Titans bring in Trevor Siemian. They choose him over Deshaun Kaiser. Kaiser, maybe a little more upside. Siemian definitely the safer pick, probably better right now. So definitely makes sense. Again, I think he's familiar with the playbook as well. And the last one, just coming out moments ago before recording this, Dalvin Cook had contract discussions with the Vikings, and those broke off here. So I was kind of predicting a contract to come soon with him. You hear right when the players show up, you hear a press conference with him. He's very happy. He was never going to hold out, he says, even though feel like it sounded like he thought about it, and it felt like he was in a good place. It almost felt like he knew a contract was close, even though an extension was close, even though we didn't hear anything about it being close. So I was kind of predicting it to happen very soon, to be close. And it kind of was right in a way that they were talking about that, and maybe it was close, but it didn't actually happen yet. It broke off. So we'll see if it actually happens, but it sounds like he's ready to go. He wants to play still. They do have Alexander Mattison, Mike Boone, Amir Abdullah, so they got a pretty good room. But I expect Cook to be the one. They could limit him a little bit, because you want him to stay healthy down the stretch, but you do want to they're a team that's kind of borderline. You know, you want to fight in the playoffs, so you want to use your best players. We'll see what the contract ends up being. I'm kind of guessing here. You know, I think I'm in the ballpark for sure. The Vikings are probably offering around 10 to 11, maybe 10.5, 11 range million per year. And I'm thinking Cook wants, at the very, very least, I'll say 11.5 or maybe even 12, you know, around there. Probably looking for the 11.5 to 13 million range. So they're probably not too, well, it depends on what part of the range it's on. They might be not be too far out, but it's tough for the Vikings because he's one of the better backs in football. They like him a lot, but he's got to stay healthy to get that kind of money. I think if you lessen, it could be that too. It could be the per year they could be in the ballpark. They could be right on actually, but the guarantees is where they could be different because it would be smart of the Vikings to lower the guarantees. But Cook probably wants them higher, I'm guessing. It would make sense. The Vikings could dish out a decent amount per year, more than you would think, but lower the guarantees. Maybe don't make it too lengthy. The running backs, especially the ones that have injuries, don't last too long. So that could be the difference there. Vikings trying to make it smart. They're usually pretty smart with contracts. So we'll see what happens there. It still could happen at any given time, or they can go week 1 without a deal, and I can still see them out there playing. So interesting stuff there. But that is going to do it for this one. We can do more videos like this, but the NFL season's right around the corner. We're getting ready for that with all kinds of rankings, predictions, and more. So we got to do our final predictions. And then in season, full coverage. Cannot wait. Almost here. So please subscribe, turn notifications on, smash that like button if you enjoyed the video here. That's going to do it, though. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.